everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. I love speaking at conferences with other marketers and content marketers because I know you guys have a hard job. So one of the things that I want to talk about today is, as Andrew said, I want to talk about the right message at the right time. But my objective is really to talk about how I do a lot of this in my day-to-day job, and he mentioned this. For me, this isn't theory. It's something that I have to go to work every day and think about. So I thought we'd start by setting the stage. And I really, when I go into the office, I think a lot about the customer life cycle. And one thing I'd like to highlight today for all of you is many of us as content marketers think a lot about inbound marketing, where our content plays a role, specifically with acquisition. And that's really, really important. But if you remember one thing from today's talk, this is just something I think is very important. Don't just stop at acquisition. Really think about the value of growing your customer base and also building brand advocates and how you do that with content. And I just want to kind of throw something out there. If you think about only acquisition and maybe you bring in 20,000 leads in a month, what if those people never convert to customers, or what if they churn? That's not helping your business. So that's just something I want to have you think about as we talk about the right message, the right time. So this is our quest. This is what all of us come to work thinking about, but we have some challenges. And I'm going to throw out this awesome Forrester quote that many of you know very well, that much of the buyer's journey has already, it's very much self-directed. And what does this mean? Because many of us have heard this statistic. What it means is your buyer today is online. They're not going and talking to a salesperson at your company. They're talking to their peers. Those of you in the room right now are probably talking to your colleagues and saying, hey, what technologies are you guys checking out? What's looking cool? And so it's really, really critical for your company to have a strong brand preference and really, really stand out, right? But as you know, this is getting harder and harder to do for all of us, right? So this statistic that we have about 3,000 brand messages a day, that's how much we're inundated with. We might, as people, recall about 50, but what's scary is we might actually only like or really remember 4. And so as a marketer, I think, okay, great. So there's this new digital marketplace. I have to be present in the conversation, but people are not really remembering me. That's tough. And I love this quote by Seth Godin because I think it says it really well, and I think he's actually one of the first kind of on the cutting edge of content marketing. But what he talks a lot about is in a crowded marketplace, this is really critical, is fitting in is a failure. So think about that for a minute. If you're just kind of blending in, people are just going to go right by you. And I always make a joke, like if you're on the second page of Google, you're basically not there, right? You're not being found, you're not being talked about. So we're faced with a lot of challenges. So what I want to talk to you today about are really 4 key areas. The first, content, and a lot of great things are being discussed today at this conference. Acquisition, and that's really where we're acquiring people, bringing them into our marketing and sales funnel. I'm going to talk a little bit about engagement, and that's really when we have people in our database, and then your challenge is really how do you accelerate your deal cycle, or if you're more of a consumer marketer, how do you keep somebody engaged over a lifetime so they continue and stay buying your products? And lastly, ROI, because that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm actually going to spend a few minutes going through how you can look at a piece of content and do real measurement, and how we do that at Marketo. So first with content, this is actually really cool. I love data, so I like to highlight this. This is from CMI and Marketing Profs. And what it says is everybody's doing content marketing. And you guys are all here. You're leading kind of the pack on this. And 93% of B2B marketers doing content marketing, 90% of B2C marketers. That's no surprise to anyone. But this is actually the part I think is fascinating. If everyone's doing it, how are you standing out? And I think about this quite a bit because I know several years ago, maybe 7 years ago, if you got an ebook in your inbox, you're like, sweet, I got this cool ebook, I'm gonna download it. Now, how many of you get about 10 ebooks a day in your inbox, right? It's crazy. And so this is interesting. Vendors give me too much material to sort through, 75%. Much of the materials are useless, 62%. I usually scan the information and then trash it. Well, at least they scan it, so that's good. But these are not good statistics, right? Especially if you're in content marketing, because we come to work every day, we work very hard, and you don't want your efforts going to waste. So that's not good. So the top challenges that I'm really identifying and we'll talk about today are producing engaging content and what that means. And then also, even though it's 52% of people see this as a challenge, is measuring the ROI. And the reason I want to highlight that is because if you can't show the impact of your content marketing efforts with your marketing programs, guess what? You're not going to get dollars and you're not going to be able to get headcount. That's just the truth. And so I really think that's important. So how are we going to do that? And this is something that I love this slide because I think it's really important. We are not all the same. And I think that this has probably been discussed a lot at this conference, but it is imperative that you have good segmentation, you understand who your buyers are, and you really think a lot about people, right? Think about what it is that they need, and this is just really critical. I think gone are the days where you're gonna send one email or have one mass message to your audience and have that work. If you're doing that, which is not ideal, I think the competition's gonna come and snap you up. It's just the reality. The bar is too high these days for that. So one thing that some of you know about me is I'm actually, my background's in research, so I love formulas. So I actually thought that this sums it up really nice. For really effective engagement, you need relevant content at the right time, and it needs to be personal. And so now what I'd like to do is talk about how, because I think it's really easy to say, just have relevant content, just make it personal. It's like telling someone, just be smarter or more attractive. It's hard, right? And so, right? It's the truth. So I'm going to go through just some very, very simple examples of what we mean. And so these are content examples at Marketo. And so what we've done is we've said, look, we're focused on the B2B enterprise market. We're focused on consumers and certain verticals. We even have content for folks that are using competitive solutions. But what we've done is we've thought a lot about these buyers, what it is they need. So a consumer marketer, we're going to do maybe a holiday marketing campaign because for those industries, they do a lot of that type of work. Whereas maybe for a B2B enterprise, it's more about how do you scale your solutions? How do you make sure that your offices in Europe are effective? So we think a lot about doing that and creating that type of content. But what makes it relevant? And this is really what I want to get to, and I'm sure that there's been a lot discussed on this at this conference, but to me, it's really simple. It's these 5 things. First and foremost, your content has to address a need. It cannot just talk about your products or services, or just go on about your company, or even talk in a long-winded way about something that your buyers honestly don't care about. So addressing a need, I think everyone gets that. Number 2 is be relatable. And I think this is really important. Know who your audience is, know what they care about, and make sure your content's mapping to their personality or their persona. I think that's really important. So if you're marketing to IT, know what IT people like, and maybe those guys aren't, or women are not the people that are gonna be reading a 100-page ebook. Maybe not, right? Number 3, and this is a passion I have that I've been talking a lot about at Marketo, make a point and get to the point. No one in here has a lot of time. Everyone's seen that meme, ain't got no time for that. Well, no one has time to do a lot of reading or investigation, so make it simple and easy for people to access your content. Number 4 is stand out, and I think this is important. In a sea where we've all seen ebooks, what about you is different? Marketo does our definitive guides. Think about something that you can do that's maybe different or unique for your business, and I think that's not always the easiest thing to do, but it's important. You can see we did our definitive guide to digital advertising, and what we did differently, and some of the key people that help with that guide are in this room, and one of the things that we did is all the people in this book work at Marketo. We didn't use stock imagery. We tried to keep it really original and different. And if you like it or not, at least it's original and it's different. And so we tried to do that. And number 5, this is important, listen to key inputs. And what I mean by that is talk to your salespeople, talk to your customers, look at top search terms online. We do a lot of that, so you can actually see what it is people are trying to find and search for. And the litmus test is if you're doing relevant content well and it's meaningful, I actually think your customers will thank you for it. To me, that's the number 1 thing. And I can give you an example. Several years ago, we created these budget and marketing planning templates. And the reason we did it is because I wanted them. I had to plan our budget for the year. I had to plan out our programs. It was like, hey, we should create these cool templates. A lot of people have from Marketo said, they're really helpful to us. So we know we're doing that right. Does everyone thank us for everything we do? Absolutely not, but we don't continue to do this. These are kind of very simple, straightforward tips. And I will also highlight, this is another thing, maybe you don't need another ebook. There's so many different types of content that you can put together or easier. Webinars, SlideShare presentations. We have amazing success with SlideShare, videos, blog posts, tons of different things that you can do. I don't want to belabor this because I think most people in here understand this pretty well, but just think about the point of diminishing returns. You might not need more content. You might just need the right content, and then think about creating different strategies. Can you hear me? Okay. That I want to talk about is presenting it at the right time, and I think that that's really, really important, right? So, that's not going to help anybody. So I think it's an important thing to make sure that you're doing at making sure that you are presenting content to where somebody is in their buyer's journey. Let me just pop this back on. How's that? I think I'm okay. No? Okay. Sorry, everyone. Detour.
Sorry about that.
So no dull moments at content to conversion, right? Woo. So what I want to get to now is right time. And I think many of you are familiar with this. I like a simple analogy that I like to use is dating. And so if you're early stage, as example with a date, you're not going to say, hey, let's go get married and move to Hawaii. That would be pretty weird, and most people wouldn't do that. And so definitely think about this with your content. So early stage, most people are not going to want to read tons about your products and services. They probably have a marketing channel, like, how do I really have effective social? How do I really create content assets that are meaningful for my business? So think about doing really simple things like a blog, a funny video, something very light and easy to access. And you'll notice here that I also have highlighted, do you put a form in front of it or not? And I really believe with early stage content, you just want people to engage with you, know your brand, learn about your company. So don't put a form in front of it. Make it really, really easy. The second that I see that and I'm doing research for a presentation and I have to fill out a form, I'm just like, not interested. But when somebody's more middle stage, and this is where they're saying, yes, I'm interested in your product or service, then it's okay to maybe put a form. And then late stage is when somebody is saying, yes, I'm actually interested in your company and what you have to offer. And so something there might be more of an analyst report or a customer case study. So this, I think most people in the room, I'm guessing, understand pretty well. But the big question I always have is, so how do you do it? How do you know where somebody is in their buying stage? And that's really, really important. So one thing that I think is if you're not doing, this is one way, and I'll give you some other examples, but lead scoring is a great, great way to know where somebody is in their buyer journey. And it's a simple prioritization mechanism so you know if somebody has the right demographics and right behavior. And then over time, when their score grows based on what they're doing with you, you can say, okay, for my salesperson, now you should speak to them. But it's based on lead fit, lead interest, their behavior, and buying stage. But this is really, really important for knowing what content to present to people. So I have this example. If somebody's early stage, and that might mean, hey, I'm a marketing manager for our business, and I've clicked on an email. That's not saying I want to buy anything. It's just saying I clicked on an email. So we might present them with a funny video. It's very early stage and light. Then if someone's middle stage, maybe they're a marketing manager, now they've visited me at an event, they've looked at a video, they've maybe even engaged with a demo. So now I might say, okay, I'll send them an analyst report with Gartner showing where our products and services fit. And then lastly, if somebody's hitting a late score, you can maybe present them with a very late stage demo. But this is a great, great tool to know where people are in their buyer journey. So that way, if somebody's early stage, you're not hitting them with something that's too concrete. So now I want to spend a little bit of time on acquisition. And so this is really where, now that we have our content, we're thinking about it, how are we bringing people into our marketing and sales funnel? So this is where we are right here. It's very early stage. We do not have people in our database at this time. And one thing I think, many of you are running programs or thinking about content for bringing people to your website. I always think about your website as essentially your home, and that's where you're driving most of your traffic to. And that's the destination. But I want to pose a question. Would you send the same email to your entire database? And most people in this audience, I think, would say, no, you wouldn't do that. Why? Because your database has customers, it has prospects, it has people in different verticals, it has people that are early stage, late stage. That would be weird, and it would not be effective. But yet, how many people do that for their website? How many of us have websites where there's just a singular message? And that I want to encourage you not to do. 74% of consumers, and I actually bet it's higher than that, when they go to a website and they don't see a message that resonates with them, they're going to leave. And we also know the average website conversion is only 2%. So think about if you could have a personal and relevant message that's meaningful for somebody. Think about how your conversion rates would go up because you're already investing in marketing programs and driving everybody to there. So I'm highly encouraging you to think about how you can personalize your experience. I'm going to talk about how you can personalize your website, and then I'll also cover how you can leverage video, social, email, and some of these other channels. And I'm going to go through some of this quickly, so if you have questions afterwards, we can talk about it. But this is one example that's really powerful. You can use, there's different tools to do this. We use a tool called real-time personalization. And again, I'm not suggesting you need to use any of these tools, but it sure makes it easier. But what this is doing, it's saying we're going to show people different content based on a location, and that's really critical, right? So if I'm doing an event in Atlanta, I don't want to show somebody in San Francisco that same event. That would be almost, it doesn't make sense, and they're probably not going to go to that. So this is a really powerful way to be able to show people, and think of it not just with events. You could try out a new product message. You could even have special offers maybe for somebody, your European market. They might want something completely different. And I love this because it enables me to use one website, but very, very different messages. You can also do things based on verticals, and this is an example from Hortonworks. They're the ones that produce Hadoop, and many of you are familiar with that. And so they actually focus on people in healthcare. This is their default website view, but over to this side, they're showing a case study that's relevant for people in healthcare, and that's all done based on IP address. So think about how powerful that is and the likelihood that somebody's going to see that and convert. And they did see a pretty good result in something like that. So a 313% increase in page views, and the visit time, I think, also went up quite a bit. Now, many of you also have started thinking a lot about account-based marketing. This is something that we've done at Marketo for quite a long time, but this is another aspect too, because a lot of your account-based marketing strategy is maybe you're selling into Amazon, you're selling into Google, but you need to really get into different groups within those companies. So what if when people from those companies go to your site, you can show them something very specific and clean? And here's just an example from Apprendia, and they're showing UPS and then Barclays. So these are dedicated content blocks. So when people from those particular companies come, you can show them a case study or something that's relevant for them. And I think this is really the way to go. And I think account-based marketing, I'm sure everyone here is going to hear a lot about it this year. But again, the more targeted and focused you can be on your website, those conversions and that stickiness is going to go way up. This is something that I also really, really love about this approach. You can test. So how many of us produce content, and when I say content, it could be an ebook, a video. In this case, they're case studies. How many of you know which of your case studies perform better? That's a really invaluable thing to be able to know. So here, we're serving up two different versions for our education vertical and then financial services, and I can see which gets the higher engagement through click-through rate. And then what that can also help me with is not only can then I say, look, we'll just show that winner, but what I can do is in my paid strategies, I can go with the case study I know did better. And so that's really important, and then you can feed that back to your team to say, wow, this brand performed better, or this type of research or case study did better. So I think that's valuable. And this is just data showing the percent increases that we've personally seen. I've talked to a lot of customers using these types of technologies, and I think it's really, really powerful. So again, even if you're not using that, just think about how you can have personalized messages on your website for the different segments that you market to. It really helps. Now, if we also think about our website, one of the things that happens, we talked about 2% conversion, which is not great. People leave your website. So what can you do to get them back? Now, I'm guessing some of you in here are using retargeting, which I think is okay. And I have a pretty funny story about this. We actually were working with a company called ExoJet, and they have private jets. And so I did some research on their site, and then I got retargeted from them for about several months. And last time people, I don't know if you guys know our CEO, I'm not getting paid enough to fly in a private jet anytime soon. So they are wasting their money on me, and that is not what you want to do. So one thing that's really powerful with some technologies, we have the ability to do this. We can actually retarget based on key criteria. So I can say I want to retarget people based on their industry, maybe if they're one of my target accounts, if they have a particular lead score. And here's just some examples. This is really more, I broke this out from B2B and B2C. So these are just mapping to attributes that we have on buyers in Marketo. So I can really make sure that my dollars, if I'm retargeting, are spent really wisely. And again, it's just being more personal and targeted and relevant, and then you're getting people back to your site. So that's a great thing to be able to do. And I just want to give you, I'm going to show you 3 examples of what this looks like. So this is us going out on ad technology networks. So Google, this is one we did for marketing managers in healthcare. So again, rather than wasting my whole ad budget going out on Google for every marketer in our database, which would not make sense, I'm being very specific and focused. And then we saw some really nice conversions from that and a pretty significant increase in leads, which I was happy to see. Here's an example where we're doing this on Facebook for key verticals. And what's nice about doing this too is you can essentially have the entire ad be about the same, but then flip out these key snippets. So the other aspect I want to highlight here is this is a very scalable way of doing this. And so again, different technologies can help you do that. Marketo has one, but you can look at others. And part of it for me is just that ability to scale because none of us have tons of time. And then lastly, this is an example on LinkedIn where we're doing the same thing. So this is just putting out a targeted specific ad on LinkedIn. And we actually, I will tell you this, we see absolutely some of the best results with LinkedIn in sponsored updates. So for those of you who are kind of investigating and trying to figure out what to do, we've done a lot of testing and see great results here. But again, the point is when somebody sees this that's specific in their feed, I'm a marketer, I'm in healthcare, that's gonna resonate a lot more to me than it's like, hey, here's just an average typical thing that you see in marketing, because a healthcare marketer has very different needs. So now that we talked a little bit about early stage and being very targeted and focused for acquisition, let's talk about engagement. And as I mentioned, this is really when you have somebody in your database and your job is really to accelerate them. So ultimately you're getting that sale, or if you're more of a consumer company, your goal here is to have that ongoing engagement so people stay your customers, which is very important. And so one of the things that I think is important, and many of you are doing, is lead nurturing. And the first thing that I want to highlight with lead nurturing, and I think many of you know this, it's all about, again, being relevant so people engage with your content and then they feel it's meaningful. But this is an example of a kind of a nurture track that we have set up. And one thing I want to point out here, it is not just email. I highly encourage you to think about, if you're nurturing, include social, include web personalization, include other aspects, because your buyer is everywhere. They're not just on email. And in many cases, they're looking at things. I look at my phone all day long, so I have a better chance of seeing something on Twitter, and people are laughing because they know me. They see me on my phone all the time. But this is a lot more of an effective way to do that. But again, how do you do it in a way that's relevant? So a lot of typical nurturers that I see, they're very much kind of like repetitive, and it's like, are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? This does not work. It actually annoys people. And I think most people in here wouldn't like to receive emails like this, yet it still happens, because I still get emails like this. So it's a lot more ideal if you have information on your buyer and you can really say, here's something that's meaningful for you. Here's this cool video. We thought you were interested in social marketing. We put this together for you. Or, hey, we know it's your birthday. Here's a coupon. And so how do you do that? And again, this is just data showing how impactful that this kind of approach is. So again, personalized content nurture produces a 20% increase in sales opportunities. We've absolutely seen this across the board because we do a lot of testing. But how do you personalize? And that's what I want to talk about, because again, I'm sure many of you get that personalization is important, but how do you do it? And I'm going to go through video, dynamic content, tokens, and triggers. And I want to highlight video personalization. There's definitely different companies that do this. This is one of our partners, Vidyard, and I spoke at their event in October, and they had sent me this email, and it had my name on it, and then if I went through the video, my name is on a sandwich, it's all over the place. I was super compelled. Like, I fell for it. I will be honest. I saw my name. I'm like, I'm clicking on this thing. So it just highlights when people see something that is meaningful, even if it has their name, the results are pretty powerful. And they shared a lot of results at their event. And I know that you can talk to them here about that. I think it's pretty cool. Dynamic content, and this is actually a really easy thing to do. This is basically you have the same email. You build an email once, but you're switching out an image or content for different segments in your database. That's all it is. Here's an example where we did this by age, and it's different vacation spots. And so we might show a spring break image if we know people are maybe, I don't know, 15 to 25. That's the image we're going to show them. We'll show people that we think might have families, more of a family-oriented image, and then over to the far right, a luxury vacation for people that might be seniors. So it's a very simple thing to do, and just that image alone says so much, and it can feel very personal and relevant. So that's an easy thing to do. The next one is tokens, and I love tokens because, again, you're building one email, and what tokens are doing, they're pulling from information in your database. So here, it's just a simple example. This is a pet shop, and I can say, hello, Lizzie, would you, we hope you're enjoying your pet fish, right? Because we know she has a fish, or that's what we're running a special on. And I can give her a % discount on her special fish food. And honestly, that's something that's gonna really resonate with somebody, and she probably really wants to spoil her fish, so she's gonna act on that email right away. The one caveat I will say about using tokens, because I think they're very powerful, it really helps you scale. You need to really check your data. So this really depends on having a good, clean data hygiene process for your database, because we've all had this go wrong where you get the email, "Hi, Mark," and I'm like, "I'm not Mark." It's like not even close, right? And that happens all the time too. So again, data cleanliness for this, but it's a really important technique. And then lastly, the one that I'm actually the most excited about is really that ability to listen and respond real time. And these are triggers, and honestly, I think this is ultimately what you want to be able to do. And so an example is, for certain audiences, I have key segments outlined to the right. So I have IT, I have finance, I have C-level. What triggers are is, if somebody does X, you do Y. So let me give you some examples. If somebody logs into your mobile app, you send them an email. If somebody goes to your website and they look at a social asset, you can email them something about a social event in the next day. And you can determine the time periods, but it's really that if this, then that. And I think that we know that there's tons of research that when somebody's in that moment, that's when you need to engage with them. That's when you need to act. And this is data that we pulled at Marketo. This is several years old, but the orange lines, what you're looking at is click-through rate at the top and click to open here. And we saw the orange lines are the lift that you get from triggered versus just nurtured or batched emails. And we actually just did this. I don't have all the data, and that's why I'm not showing it. We just did this exact test, and we even saw a higher lift, because it's in that moment that you're sending somebody something. It's really engaging and it's listening to them versus just sending it at some random time. So really, really important and great results with something like that. Now I want to close out on ROI, and this is my favorite topic. I'm very passionate about it, and I think it's really critical. And I talked about this earlier. It matters to all of us in here if you're a marketer, because you need to be able to justify your budget, and you also need to make sure that you're able to protect your headcount, or ideally get more headcount. That's what we all want. And so really, why is ROI and measurement of content hard, or why is it hard in general? And this is, again, data from us. And typically for us, before we close a deal, we see on average about 7 touches. And I will tell you, for our enterprise level deals, it's much higher than that. Sometimes it's very hard to know what success looks like. Is it, hey, somebody downloaded my content asset, we're doing great, or they shared it out 1,000,000 times. What is it at the end of the day? And then there can be multiple influencers, and that makes it really tricky. And so many of you are probably kind of looking at maybe conversion-based form fill-outs, or even opportunities won. And I really want to emphasize the importance of getting to multi-touch ROI, and I'm going to show you an example why. This is just highlighting, and this is really, think of this as a customer journey in the simplest form. This is when they first start speaking to you. The green part is where that opportunity is created, and then it's the deals closed. But all of those are different marketing touch points with a different piece of content. And so ideally, if you're only looking at early stage first touch, that's all you're looking at. You're missing all of those other touch points, and you're not assigning the right value to your content and your team's efforts. So this is just a nice schematic showing how simple this is. This is a 3-month time period, a 100K deal, and first touch attribution is giving all the credit to watching the demo video on our homepage. And we'll say, yep, that gets all the credit. So if you did that, you'd sort of say, okay, well, we should do a lot more demo videos, or you could easily overinvest in something like that, which I see people do. Now, what multi-touch is doing, it's saying, look, we're going to look at all the different touch points, and here you'll notice that we do equal weighting attribution. You do not have to do that. There's some companies that we work with, and they'll say, oh, an event gets more heavy weighting than something else. That you can determine. We just have decided that equal weight is a simple way to go, but it's giving equal credit to all of those different touch points. This is the same deal. And you'll notice that I have registered for analytics webinar is a 0. That's because they didn't attend. So using marketing automation, you can say, here's my success criteria, which I think is important. So you could say, okay, great, those are cool charts, but why do I give a rip? This is why you care. because you ultimately want to know what is working for you at top of the funnel acquisition, what is really good there versus what is good at deal acceleration. And they can often be different marketing programs with different pieces of content, and we see that all the time. So it really helps us inform our strategy to know, okay, what do we want to do at top of funnel from a content and channel perspective, and then what do we want to do really for pushing people along in their deal cycle. So very different questions, and you need to be able to look at that. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to end on this example because again, I really want to make this real for everyone, and I wanted to show you how we've done something like this at Marketo. So we worked with The Economist on, it was a content piece called The Rise of the Marketer. And as you can imagine, any content piece, whether you create it, you work with a third party, the stuff's not cheap, right? So you ultimately have to be able to say, look what we did. So this is how we approached it. We said, what is our goal for this piece? And this is really simple, and you guys can steal this because I think it works really well. Our goal was to generate brand awareness and create lead gen. Our metric, we were going to look at engagement with C-level. We were actually very interested in engaging a C-level audience. We wanted to get new names, and we wanted to create pipeline. This is important too. Timing. What was the timing that we were looking at this? We looked at 1 month, we looked at 3 months, and we looked at a year. And I highly recommend that you guys do that. In many, many marketing programs, you're not going to see that great result day one. Even at an event like this, if you're right now and you're a company exhibiting here, if you go back to your office, you're probably not going to be like, yeah, 10 won deals from that event. It's going to take time, right? So I think it's important to highlight what time frame. And then we asked some questions. Did we create C-level engagement? Did this topic resonate with our audience? Did this content help create pipeline? So we asked these questions. Now I want to show you Google Analytics because again, I recognize not everyone in here is using marketing automation, so use something, and everyone can use Google Analytics, and this is a really important thing. So this is just over a particular quarter, this was Q3, and all we're saying is, what really was helpful for us here? And for us, organic really did the best. We got the most visits and the richest engagement there. What we noticed is our emails actually, we got good views, but people didn't engage with those very long. So I'm able to actually look at all of these different aspects, and interestingly enough, and this is honestly real data, we did see kind of a drop off, and it actually told us quite a lot early stage. And another thing that we've done is we've also created a weighted index for shares. So, and I'm happy to talk about this. We've basically looked at all our social channels, looked at shares, and created a weighted index to see, did something do better relative to something else? So there are many approaches that you can use if you're not using marketing automation, and I just wanted to highlight that. So our early stage assessment, and this is month one, we say, what did that engagement look like? How many shares did we get? And that, again, this is more an internal engine room metric for marketing to say, how did this thing do? And again, I will highlight too, it also depends on how much you promote an asset, and I think all of us understand that. New names, we were able to get over 2,300 names, and for our investment, it was about $17, so we felt good about that. And did it resonate with our target audience of C-level marketers? When we pulled the list, we looked at this in Marketo, we had 50% that were greater than, that were a VP and above. And to me, I was like, that's not really what I wanted. I wanted it to be higher, so I gave that a yellow. But this is just highlighting simple questions and how you're ranking them. It's almost a report card. Then later stage, we start to say, okay, now let's start to look at pipeline. How well did we do here? For first touch, we have our data there, multi-touch, and I'm commenting if I think it's good or not. And close won deals, we were able to see a 10x on this, which I think is very good. For us, we like to see better than a 5, so that means for the money that we invested in this piece, we were able to get a 10x on that, which is really good. And I'm not including people's time, this is just pure dollars, but you can do it another way. Then we also want to ask the question, what channels work for this asset? So for us, a sponsored webinar actually did the best. And so this was actually very helpful too, because when we go to do another project like this, we want to know where our top performing channels are. So I think that's a critical thing to ask. And then this was the report card that we shared. So we had to go back and say, we spent this money, what did it do? Did we create that C-level engagement? Yes, we were able to really talk to and engage 50% that were C-level, but we did see there was a room for improvement. We wanted to do better. Did it resonate with our target audience? Did we bring in new names? All of these key things, and I like this because it really cleanly sums up how this content piece did. And I'm showing you that you definitely can get a lot of this just using Google Analytics. And I do think marketing automation is important because it ties into your CRM, so then you can get that pipeline data, which ultimately is what you want to be able to do there. So I'm going to summarize with these 5 points. We talked about a lot. I had 30 minutes. I think I'm a little bit over. But the first thing is we talked about content and how important engaging content is. And that's really making sure that it's relevant, it's personal, and you think about delivering it at the right time. And that is what's really, really critical. Think about triggers or any way that you can make sure if somebody is engaging with you if you have a mobile app, what can you do right away to make sure that that's meaningful? Make acquisition awesome, and think about, again, your website. It's such a great place to start, and so many people don't do it. Think about ways of being personal and relevant there. Engage your buyers by really listening and responding back in a real-time manner. And I love thinking about multi-channel for nurture. I can't stress that enough. People are not just on email. And I'm not saying it's easy, but think of ways that you can incorporate that. We talked about scoring just a little bit because that helps you understand where somebody is in their buyer cycle. And then lastly, measuring programs and channels, because again, it's very, very powerful to show your impact and the investment and all the time and hard work you put into your content and what that's delivering. So that's what I have. Thank you for your time, and hopefully this was helpful.